stand here any longer. Let's go. She grabbed Katy's hand and they climbed up a hill. If we can get up to the top before they discover we're gone, then we will be all right. We can use the sheet you're wrapped in to slide down the other side. Haley didn't know if they were going to be all right. It was just something she'd heard her father say when he took her on camping trips. But they'd had a tent, compass and shoes then. Here there were no tents, and the night with its cold was coming quickly on them. Without shelter, they were like sitting ducks. How she wished it were true that Hunter could find them in this large pine forest. Haley had to walk, and her feet were bruised and hurting. If her feet were bad, Katy's had to be worse with her legs swelling, yet she didn't complain, but she would stop every so often to scratch her legs. She had red welts on both legs and arms. I wish I had known we were being kidnapped and we had to trek through a forest. One would have brought some bug spray, and I would have asked for my shoes. Haley glared at her, and continued stumbling along among the high grass, pine cones and pine needles blanketing the ground. Haley knew what Katy was doing, by her snarky remarks. She was trying to make a terrible situation better, with what she considered amusing snippets. They were both scratching from the bug bites, their arms and legs and back. Then they spotted a cabin. It was small, but nevertheless, it was shelter, and maybe someone was there who could help them. What do you think? Katy asked, looking at Haley. We have to take our chances, unless you think you can walk further. Haley was surprised that Katy could keep up with her, considering she had to be carrying 4 or 5 pups, maybe more. We don't know where we're going. We have to go south, and you keep leading us north to the mountains, Katy said. The compound is south, and we have to get as far away from there as possible. So, if you have a better idea, then let's hear it. Haley kept walking, and Katy stumbled slowly behind her. I'm beginning to believe that if I had to choose from dying in this forest, I would take my chances with the shifter. Maybe they would have mercy on us, Katy said. On me, not you. The shifter wants me and not a pregnant woman with wolf pups, Haley whispered. They hiked closer to the small cabin. Haley tried the door. It opened without problems. Because they were tired, cold, and the bites itched, they were glad to be inside, and didn't question why it wasn't locked. Haley walked around cautiously inside, inspecting the place, looking for a light. She found the lights and then turned them on. Katy had already found a small fridge. She opened it, and discovered it had an assortment of milk and fruit. Look in the cupboard for canned goods, she shouted. You look for it, Haley shouted back. Haley walked into the next room. There were women's clothes in the closet. She opened another door, and found a shower. We have clean clothes and shoes too, Haley said, trying the shoes on for size. It never occurred to them why there were women's clothes and shoes, and they fitted them. They were too exhausted and too hungry. I'm famished. I could eat a horse, Katy said, stuffing some bread in her mouth she had found on top of the counter. You may eat one before we get out of this. Katy glanced up at Haley. The food was fresh. Deli meat and bread. They made a sandwich, and because they were tired, they took a shower afterwards, and fell asleep on the small twin beds, after a brief discussion about how they were going to get home tomorrow when the sun rose. Katy had it all planned. Wait for the people to return to their cabin, and then tell them they had been kidnapped, and they would get a reward if they brought them home. It was all a fallacy, because Haley knew it wasn't that simple, and she knew there was something terribly wrong. It was a feeling she had, coupled with the convenience of clothes and food laid out before them. It was as if it was one of those fairy tale books about 2 children lost in a forest, and they'd come across a cabin in the woods, and there was a gentle old woman. Hansel and Gretel, she recalled. That was the fairy tale. But it wasn't a fairy tale after all, but a horror story, Haley remembered. She just didn't want to alarm Katy and have her start screaming, perhaps abort the babies. She had been through enough. So Haley kept quiet and let Katy have her fanciful ideas and dream of getting back to her beautiful home and having Hunter rescue them. Haley finally closed her eyes, knowing she was too tired to do anything, because night was on them. She and Katy didn't hear the footsteps of a lion shifter. No one would hear them stalking their prey. They didn't hear when he stood over them, looking and surveying Haley. They didn't hear when Brian leant down and breathed over Haley, smelling her hair, taking in her seductive scent. All Brian could think about was taking her as she slept. He watched her lying in a fetal position, covered by a sheet. Watching her, he fisted his cock, and it was hard. It hadn't been that way for a long time. Too much squabbling among his many wives. Too many different species of shifter females he had to contend with and control. He'd just given up and would leave them, go to the city or to his home in the forest to get peace. Now he had a taste for a human, and he could feel the excitement course inside of Chapter 13. The werewolves made camp on the north side of the lake. They would not be there long. It was then Tracker got a signal on his iPhone. Hunter and Thorn sat crouched in a circle, looking at each other, wondering if Tracker had picked up the trail, and whether they could reach the girls in time. Tracker had taken the lead on this. He had been the best at finding animals than any of the Samsa werewolves. He could track an animal for miles when the animal ran at full speed. He knew by smell and instinct where each animal would retreat. It didn't matter if it was a bear, mountain lion, or man, he could find it. Lysel had named his firstborn, much to Adrian's dismay. She had said, "What kind of name is Tracker? He will have to carry that all his life. When he goes to school, the children will laugh at him." Next to his name written in the werewolves' ancestral books, she wrote a name she wanted, and that was Christian. To her he was Christian Samsa, her bad boy of all bad boys. She knew why she had him Christian, but Lysel never knew, and when Lysel wasn't around she called him Christian, especially because he was bad and good at the same time. Lysel wouldn't hear of any other names, and was completely against naming his sons human names. He said to her, when she proposed a human name instead of Tracker, "They will laugh at him if you give him a silly name like Bo or Chip. He will have to fight all through school. Now those names will get him a few good chuckles, especially from the girls." So Adrian, feeling out of her element, not knowing much about boys' names and werewolves, allowed Lysel to name their sons, but she quietly scrawled their human names down because they were both human and werewolves, and they would need those names if they went out into the world of men. And it was a good thing they did, because she had 3 of her sons off in college. It was a gift Tracker had possessed since he was a pup. His sense of smell and his eyes were so sharp he could see for miles in fog or heavy snow. He could smell even if the wind changed. When the phone rang, he answered. Looking to his father, he stretched out his hand. "It's for you." Lysel stood and strode to him, taking the phone and turning his back on Hunter and Thorn. "I wonder who would be calling me way out here," he said, trying to get a laugh out of someone, but no one was a bit amused. They had just swum across a lake, and it had been a while since they had committed to that tiring feat. Every part of their bodies had been challenged, and their energy drained, not to mention every muscle in their legs and arms was sore, only because it wasn't something they did every day. However, they had proven they were up to the task. None lagged behind Hunter and Tracker, who were skilled swimmers. It was a game for the two. They jumped into the water with Thorn and Lysel keeping up with them, but today wouldn't determine who the better was, because Hunter and Tracker both reached the bank of the lake first and at the same time. When Tracker handed Lysel the phone, he looked at him. "Who is it?" "Wilder," Tracker said to Lysel. "I hope this is good news. We can use some by now. I don't think Tracker can pick up a scent after crossing this lake." Tracker, hearing his father, said, "Speak for yourself, father. I have the scent already." "It's good news." "Tell Tracker his skills are no longer needed," Wilder said, his voice hesitant and low. Katy called and said where you and the others can pick her up. "I'm sending Devon with a car. I average the time it will take you to get there. If you're quick, you may beat him. It's not too far from where you are now." "What about Haley? Is Hunter in hearing distance?" Wilder questioned, his voice lifeless and dry. "No, but he's looking at me." "Walk away from them. I don't want Hunter to hear this." Lysel did as Wilder said. "Don't tell Hunter that Haley's not with Katy." "But I can't." "Only if he asks. Don't volunteer any information. We can't have him going off confronting the lion shifter without help, but first we have to get Katy back and make sure she's safe, and then we can look for Haley." Wilder had a ring to his voice that wasn't convincing. Lysel knew his brother, and he knew Wilder's tone lacked commitment to Haley's recovery, with a promise she could be found, only once he decided she was worth sacrificing his pack for her. Lysel hit the button after Wilder gave him directions to the hotel. When he turned around, all eyes were on Lysel. "What is it?" "Tell us," Hunter questioned. "That was your father. He said we need to get to this hotel off Interstate 80 as soon as possible." Lysel's face didn't show concern and alarm, so Hunter thought somehow the girls had managed to escape. He didn't ask any questions, except to ask Tracker the directions to the hotel. His mind told him what he wanted to hear. Hunter had stripped and placed his clothes in a knapsack across his chest. He started running, and didn't take time to ask or wait for the others to follow, but they were as quick in their change as he was. They were close behind him, as Hunter rushed into the forest at werewolf speed, running at the swiftness of a racehorse. As they neared the Tahoe National Forest on Highway 80, sitting away from the interstate was a hotel, and parked outside the hotel was one of the Samsaw's SUVs. Devon had made it there before Hunter. Hunter paused to catch his breath, realizing he had to dress. He quickly put on his jeans and zipped them, then he threw on his shirt, not bothering to button it. He dashed into the lobby without shoes. Shoes weren't second nature to him, and so he never noticed his bare feet. Breathless, shirt open and barefoot, Hunter stood at the desk and said, "There's a SUV outside parked at the entrance. Which room is he in?" "You can't come in here barefoot with your shirt open and ask for a guest's room number, sir," the young desk clerk said. "I know," Hunter said, breathing hard and in spurts. "Now which room is it? And this time if you don't tell me I'll—" His tone was defiant and threatening. His eyes menacing as his brow furrowed, and his eyes turning into two dark deep blue pools. "He won't do anything. Now button your shirt, son." Lysel placed his hand on Hunter's shoulder, calming him. "Which room is it?" Lysel said, looking at the clerk with a grave expression. The desk clerk blurted out the number. Thorne and Tracker followed Lysel and Hunter to the hallway where they rushed up the stairs, taking each step 3 at a time. They opened the door on the floor the desk clerk had given, and the room sat directly across from the stairs. Hunter banged on the door, and Devon opened it. Hunter looked around. "Where is she?" "I'm here, Hunter." Devon looked at Katy as she embraced Hunter. The others behind Hunter saw it too. Hunter pulled away, his eyes searching the room. "Where is Haley?" Katy's mouth fell into a hard line. "She stayed with the lion shifter," Katy's voice was almost a whisper. Breathless and defeated, Hunter sank into a chair. He glanced up and around at everyone. He felt betrayed and devastated. Then he took control of his senses. Staring away from Katy and Devon, he calmed. "Haley wouldn't do that. She and I are to be married." Katy sat on the side of Hunter as the others looked on. I tried to talk her out of it, but he persuaded her that she would be better off with him. He said that he was rich and could protect her, Katy said, her voice rising above the silence in the room. I have money and she has an inheritance, Hunter said. He didn't address the protection part, because clearly he didn't do that well. He raked his hands through his hair twice, trying to make sense of what Katy was saying. Maybe she's looking for something you didn't have. He's a powerful shifter from what I understand, and he was able to snatch us from under your noses, Katy said, with her eyes meeting the werewolf's eyes and locking with Lysel. Lysel saw the cruel and desirous nature in Katy's eyes, and that she wanted Hunter to herself. She dropped her eyes when she noticed him returning a narrow, steely glance. I don't feel well, she said, holding her stomach. Devon, take me back to the ranch. I feel sick. It has been a terrible ordeal for me. I'm finally safe. She held Hunter's hand tight. Devon reached for her to have her stand. We need to get Katy home, Devon said, taking Katy by the hand, then hoisting her into his arms. Are you coming, Hunter? She questioned. I need to give you a message Haley made me promise to give to you. What is the message? She looked around the room, meeting Lysel's eyes once more. She wanted both brothers, and she wasn't going to give up, even if she had to sacrifice Haley. It meant nothing to her to get Haley out of the way. Haley had been the single most reason that Hunter had moved away from her, just when she had convinced him that he and Devon could share her. Let's go. Katy needs to be comfortable where she can tell us what happened, Lysel said, his eyes following Katy. They all took Lysel's direction and headed for the SUV. Devon and Hunter sat in the back seat, with Katy in the middle. Tracker and Lysel ahead of them with Thorn driving. It had been an hour of silence, and they were driving up the road to the ranch. The car stopped at the door, and everyone filed out of it. After I rest and eat, Hunter, I need to talk to you about Haley. I need to tell you what happened, but I'm too tired now. Please forgive me, Katy said, looking into Hunter's trusting eyes. Lysel looked at the performance that Katy gave. She had in one fell swoop defeated Haley, and convinced Hunter that Haley had chosen to be with the lion shifter. Devon carried Katy into the house and up to his old room. Wilder walked from the library to meet them in the foyer. He motioned with his hand, and they followed him to the family room, which had a clear view of the Olympic-size pool. Tracker looked at the pool, his back to Thorn and Lysel. Some of you need a little more time swimming. That performance you gave at the lake was disastrous. I have dogs that could swim faster than some of you. Tracker tried to lighten the mood of the room. Damon managed to give out a closed smile, because he wasn't with them, and didn't see the length of the lake. Sitting on the leather sofa, Wilder and Hunter sat near each other, Hunter looking lost. His eyes didn't blink. He just stared at his father. Lysel and his 3 sons sat across from them. Drayton joined them a few minutes later. Well, we got one of them back, Wilder said, his voice rising and falling. She's the one that's important to our pack. Hunter's eyes whipped around to Wilder. Haley's important to me, Hunter shouted, raising his voice to Wilder. Would you have been so indifferent if it were Mother? Everyone knew the answer to that question. The room was heavy with silence, except for Hunter's hard breathing. He stood facing his father, his back to the pool, his back to the glass doors leading to the outside. Rain began falling, the sky darkened, and Hunter's riveting blue eyes deepened. We can't defeat a lion shifter, Hunter. Wilder said, his voice taking control of the situation, as Hunter stood looking down at him. Father did, Lysel reminded Wilder. He shot him with an arrow and a gun. We can't do that to our kind, just because he takes a human who wants to be with him. The young werewolves looked at Wilder. It was the first time they'd heard about the gun. They thought it was only a bow and arrow. She doesn't want to be with him. Something had to happen for Haley to agree to this, Hunter said, looking around for someone to side with him. We need to hear what Katy has to say before we put our pack in jeopardy, Wilder said. We don't know where Haley is. He could have her in Europe by now, then what are you going to do? Search around for her your whole life, and find out that she has his cubs, and then you can't have her anyway. If he does impregnate her, you can't take her cubs. And if you're foolish enough to take her cubs and her, then he will hunt us one by one, and there will be nothing left of the pack, Wilder said, his eyes focused on Hunter. When Hunter didn't reply, Wilder added, Is that what you want? There are too few mature werewolves in our pack, and too few werewolf shifters to fight his pride. His females will fight us too, especially since 2 of their cubs are dead. Wilder's voice was a deep, heavy whisper. What would you have me do? Abandon her to him. I love her. You will love many women in your life. Didn't you love Katy? Did you love many women before you met my mother? He knew the answer to the question before he asked it. His father had made love to women, but loved only Adrian. I love only Adrian. When I was younger, I thought I loved those women, but it wasn't love, it was raw lust. When I met your mother, I knew. A werewolf knows. It's something that they can't define. It's something that transcends lust and sex, Wilder said, expressing Lysel and Drayton's feelings as well about Adrian. That is what I feel for Haley, and that is how I came to know I wanted her for my mate, and that there could be no other in my life. Wilder sat back and inhaled, and with a long breath he exhaled. We will do everything we can to get her back, my son. Don't expect miracles. All I can say is prepare yourself for the worst. And what might that be? Hunter said, looking his father's way, hoping he could handle the answer. He didn't want to hear words about giving up. He could never give up. He wasn't made like that. He knew how to persist through the worst odds, and find his way home, only to find another disappointment. His brother Devon had mated with Katy. That she may have gone of her own free will, Wilder said, measuring his words. Nevertheless, Hunter knew if it wasn't possible, Haley would never give in to Brian Anderson, the lion shifter. She had said to him just a few days ago that she would never leave him, and she would never love anyone but him, and that was enough for Hunter not to give up on her. When Devon entered the room, all eyes turned in his direction. Katy is well, and the pups are okay. At least that's what Robert thinks. After all, he's the doctor. Devon tried to smile. He walked over to Hunter, flashing a closed, nervous smile. Katy wants to talk to you. Hunter didn't say a word. He just turned and left the room.